And Vilas Dorsainvil is the executive director of the Haitian Community Help and Support Center in Springfield, Ohio. He joins us now. Vilas, I guess first of all, thank you so much for being with us during this holiday season. We appreciate it. How are folks doing in Springfield? What are you hearing in terms of whether people are moving out of town?
Yeah, thank you for having me, James. So I think that there is not a mass exodus, but actually some folks left out of fear and anxiety by the fact that they do not know what might be happening with the upcoming administration. As I said, it's not a mass exodus, but you know that people are not dealing with fear and anxiety the same way, especially when they know that they are here legally and there is that rhetoric that they're going to be removed. So they try to relocate themselves in a safer place or any other place they believe that they will be safe.
And so there are some folks leaving. For the folks who are staying, how are they feeling? I have to think there must be some anxiety as to whether or not Donald Trump is going to take away their status and they may be forced to go back to Haiti. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I think that the folks here, they have that kind of confidence because they believe that they are true and peaceful citizen working for the well-being of the community. They hear what the president-elect said, but they believe that that will have an economic impact on the city if they remove them. They believe that any government with common sense will rather work with them instead of removing them because they participate in boosting the economy of the community. And there will be a huge economic impact on the community if they remove them. So they stay here and they believe that the government, the upcoming government, will think twice before taking that decision because of the role they play in the community by boosting the economy.
And it's not just the fear of deportation. We understand, Vilas, that the Dayton Daily News newspaper has reported that neo-Nazis, the KKK, other hate groups are now routinely visiting Springfield, including something, quote, the Blood Tribe, something called the Blood Tribe, a violent neo-Nazi hate group. Are you picking up on any of this? Are you seeing any of this? What's the atmosphere like in Springfield right now?
I think it's a little bit calmer than before. I for the past 3 weeks, I don't see them coming because I think that the community leaders and the local authorities, they rejected every kind of hate in the city. They do not encourage them, but they used to come in the city just to create some kind of panic in the community. But for now, I don't know if they hear the voices of people, and especially there was like a peaceful march last month telling folks around that we are not a community where we want hate and any kind of a thing that could hurt people. So I think that they hear that in for the last 3 weeks, I don't see them coming in town. So I don't know. But for now, the condition of the city is a little bit calmer, and folks are living together for the Thanksgiving season.
And Vilas, we spoke with so many people in your community around the time Donald Trump was making these comments about people there eating their cats and dogs and so on. And of course, that was all false. I guess what is the reaction there to the fact that he won and that he's going to be the president again? What are you picking up on? What are you hearing? What's your reaction?
I think that, yeah, so people are still here trying to figure out what will happen. And because of the rhetoric that they made, they believe that those rhetoric was false. By the fact that now he's the president-elect, I think that he will be the leader of the country. And folks in the community believe that his responsibility will be to join hands with folks here and to make the community better by the fact that it was his campaign promise to make America great again. And if he wants to do that, I think that he would look for people who do not have criminal records, and people who are here just to make sure that they work for the well-being of the community. And they believe as well that the administration will think of the decision. They would believe as well by the fact that the rhetoric was false. Now, the administration, the upcoming administration, won't make any move to hurt the community anymore. So I think this is something that people here believe will happen, and we're just being observant of how it's going to be. So because he is in the position as a leader now to pull everybody together and to look for a better solution for Springfield.
And do you? It sounds like you're trying to be optimistic there. Do you think Trump is capable of pulling people together? I mean, after all, he did say during the campaign some just terrible, nasty things about Haitian immigrants in your community. I mean, I just have to wonder, is that maybe some wishful thinking on your part? He has talked about mass deportations.
Yes, yes, that's what he says, and it might be some wishful thinking. But at the end of the day, I try to be optimistic about him rethink of his decision, because the thing is, Haiti is not in a good shape now for people to go back there. And we believe that his administration will think twice before taking that decision. And especially, I will normally emphasize on that by saying that the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, first, they are here legally, and second, they do not have a criminal records, and third, they towards boosting the economy of the country. So it might be some wishful thinking, but at the end of the day, every administration who would want a better country would normally appreciate those kind of immigrants. So this is my wish. I don't know, but I just put it out there.
I appreciate what you're saying, Vilas, and it's always good to be optimistic. But what would life be like for some of the people in your community if they are deported back to Haiti? I have to think that they would be worried about that.
Yeah, they are worried about that because don't forget that they left Haiti because of the insecurity, actually.
Right.
All those political upheaval in the country is not in a good shape. And this is where the anxiety lies and the fear lies by the fact that they know that if they are removed from the USA, they're going to be back in the same situation that pushed them to leave. So they just look for a safe place to work and send their kids to school and to stay, but they are not looking for trouble. So this is why I am appealing to the upcoming administration to rethink the decision, because we are here as immigrants just to make the country going forward as peaceful citizens and so many professionals in town that can be useful for the community.
Well, and I see you're wearing a red tie there, Vilas. Maybe you're trying to send a visual message as well to the incoming administration. But we appreciate your time very much. Vilas Dorsainvil, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck to you. Thank you.